courage to confront your blind spots. On this episode of The Culture Hack, we have Jeff Tetz. He is the CEO of Results, and we're talking about how Results brings a framework of change, but ultimately it's up to the individual to look deep within and face their blind spots. You're not going to want to miss this episode of The Culture Hack. Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Jeff Tetz, welcome to The Culture Hack. Thanks so much for coming.
Well, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun the last few episodes. Jeff is, of course, the CEO of Results. And if you missed the previous episodes, we talked about Results and the framework to help businesses evolve and grow and change in a systematic way. We told some stories about milk crate moments and culture and human behavior and not walking by and how to create that pride in what you're doing and that excellence. And then last episode, we really got into change and how to speed up adoption of change and kind of some of the science behind it. And now I want to talk a little bit, bring it back to Results. How do you guys change and evolve where you guys are?
Yeah, well, here's one of the things I love about our business, besides the fact that we just work with some of the coolest business leaders around. But one of our core values is live what we teach. And I kind of call it the Buckley's core value, that it's like you don't always want to go to the gym, but you just like, it tastes awful, but it works. And I love that stuff because, I'd be remiss if I said that applying habits and consistency is often not dependent upon motivation. Oftentimes you have to kind of go to the motivation through your habits and consistency. That's sort of where motivation and fulfillment comes from, I think, not the other way around. If we waited for motivation, we would probably never do anything, right? So, so that's important to us that we're walking alongside of our clients, and clients have a great way of holding a mirror up to us sometimes and reminding us of the areas that maybe we ourselves have got complacent on. But we follow our structure. I mean, we've got a one-page plan, we've got a clear vision and a roadmap. We've got a consistent meeting rhythm with our management team and KPIs and role profiles. And so we're constantly evaluating the progress of the business towards our goals and engaging our team in surveys and feedback and one-on-one discussions. And so those are some of the frameworks and structural pieces we have at play. And we're so enthusiastic, I think, about what we do. Like we're not every day is a grand slam, but more often than not, like we're just so passionate and fulfilled by helping people achieve their potential that you almost can't help but experiment with new ways to do it. And one of the things that had happened to us about 10 years ago is because we're so connected into the world of thought leadership is we've got some really strong relationships with leaders and public speakers and people that are at American colleges and Canadian universities that are doing workplace research. And we had an opportunity to do a very small leadership retreat in the Rocky Mountains. We'd never planned to be in the event business, but we said, that makes some sense, and let's see if we can fill that. So 10 years ago, we had 35 business owners that gathered in the Rocky Mountains for a one-day retreat with a leadership expert named John Spence from Gainesville, Florida. And we packaged it with a Super Bowl party, and that evolved into one of Canada's most preeminent leadership conferences. And we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. We hosted at the Pomeroy Kananaskis Lodge in March, and that it sells out with 325 leaders, and we bring thought leaders and speakers from all over North America. And like that would just be one example of something that has sort of tapped into our change muscle and our creative flair.
I think that's the cool thing, when you use the term, evolution or growth, right? It's not always planned.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of an opportunity came along and you're like, well, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I like about business, there isn't a script to follow. Like there's disciplines, there's habits, there's more, like we've got more access to research now on that would create a more predictable work environment than ever before. And I think it's important not to ignore those predictable habits, but I think we also have to acknowledge that rules are sort of meant to be broken, and there's never going to be a one size fits all. And sometimes you just kind of got to follow your gut and your intuition and see how it goes. Having some quick criteria can be important to make sure you don't get too far down a rabbit hole that's not going to serve you. But I think it's important that you're experimenting. You're trying to find new ways of doing things and new ways of adding value. And I think one of the benefits of having a bit of structure, though, is that it's a filter for ideas. Like if you've got clear values, if you've got a purpose, if you've got a vision, and you're really clear about your target market and the big problems you're solving, I think if you're looking at opportunities through that lens and using those things as a filter, it becomes a little easier what you should maybe say yes to, but more importantly, the things that you should say no to.
I've often thought that complicated decisions that people are agonizing over, you put that lens through and then it becomes a simple decision.
Yeah, it can be, for sure. Yeah, it can be. And I can't remember who said this. You know what it was? It was Ed Catmull, who is the founder of Pixar production studios, responsible for Toy Story and Up and Bug's Life and all of these amazing animated motion pictures, and they were acquired by Disney a few years ago. But one of the senior leaders at Pixar used to have this sort of saying that just if you got sort of two choices, just the worst thing you can do is just stay at the bottom of two hills. Pick a hill, run up it as fast as you can, and just choosing a path and running up that hill, you're going to figure out quicker than someone that's just paralyzed by indecision and indecisiveness which one, if it was the right path or not. And if it wasn't, run the heck back down it and run up the other one if it's still available. And so, I know not all decisions carry the same consequence. And I think when the stakes are high, a little bit more thought, of course, needs to go into which hill you're going to run up. But I think too often we analyze things for too long instead of just, there's a little bit of a filter and a decision-making criteria, but let's pick a hill to run up and see how it goes.
Right? Just start.
Love it.
My old boss used to say, maybe wrong, but never in doubt.
That's good.
Right? And that was the context of construction, where like everything's a problem all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So you sort of get used to it. But, you made me think about the power of frameworks like results. But you can never quite predict human behavior, as you said. You come into one company, here's their framework, you kind of do the meetings, and they react a certain way. You go to the next company, do the exact same thing with the exact same team, and they react a different way. So you guys kind of have to be able to kind of bend and flex as you need.
Yeah, and I think it's like an infomercial. If you read the fine print or at the bottom of the advertisement, results may vary. It's true. Like with results may vary, and because there are so many factors. Like industries can be impacted in inconsistent ways. People's receptiveness to change, people's willingness to take risk. There's so many factors, and when we're engaging with a client in the early stages, I'm very open about that results are different for everybody. And the thing that I've got a high degree of confidence in is that our relationships with clients make the roadmap clearer. And it gives them, it's like vegetables for your health and fitness. If we eat vegetables and we move our bodies, we're more likely to live longer and healthier, but there's no guarantee. And it's the same thing for a business. And if we just embrace the fact that if we apply some habits, some focus, and some discipline, you are more likely to achieve better results than you would have otherwise. But you may not receive the best or the same results as somebody else that went through it, even if they're in the same industry as you. And I think that's just an important reality. That's life.
Well, and I think, there's an important note about using consultants or someone like Results is you have to view it as a partnership, right? You can only do so much. If the client doesn't show up, I'm sure you have stories in your history where you eventually maybe have to part ways, because if they're not doing their part, if they're not showing up and doing the things, then there's no sense fighting it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think there are two fundamental things that that we encounter that would be, I call them internally inflicted challenges versus so externally inflicted challenge would be trade wars and tariffs, economic uncertainty, the ebbs and flows of a commodity-based economy, those kinds of things, a pandemic and COVID 5 years ago. Those are the external things that we all deal with that we can't plan for. But there's a couple of things that we see that I would call them internally inflicted problems or wounds that organizations struggle with. And number one is courage to look in the mirror and confront our blind spots. It is not easy for people to do that. The second thing is the willingness to make tough decisions. And that's one of the things that our process does is if you work with a credible coach or an advisor that is competent and they care deeply about your personal success, you're going to get to a place where you're going to have no choice but to confront blind spots and make tough decisions. If you are unwilling to do those two things, you are very unlikely to have any transformational breakthroughs. And so that's a big thing to think about as we just navigate this journey of not just being a business leader, but just being a human being, trying to do the best we can.
It is amazing how, if you look at the leadership team or the leader, their personal growth, so too will the business grow. And I think, to your point, that's why it's so important to do that, because people don't like looking into the mirror at their own decisions, and usually the stuff that they need to deal with, I know this is true for me, it's the stuff I don't like to look at.
Yeah.
So someone forces me to I know.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why it's important to really be deliberate about who you surround yourself with, right? What's the saying? We become what we think about and who we spend our time with. And so choose wisely.
I like that. And that to me is the perfect mic drop for you, Jeff. That was perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom. For the last time someone wants to get a hold of Results or talk to you, where do they go?
Well, Adam, this was such a thrill. And for anyone that wants to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jeff Tetz. And please check out our website at unleashresults.com.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.